we're live. We are in the studio. And today we're going to do Anne's recording. We're going to have a listen to that, do some editing live. How about that, Anne?
That's brilliant, yes, because there's quite a bit of editing to do.
Well, we're not going to do all of it. We're going to just do some basic intro stuff and give you some hands-on experience. What was the recording that you did, Anne?
So it was an interview that I did with a very good friend of mine, who her name is Mary Ferrante, and she is American, well, Italian American, and then she met her Malaysian German husband in the States. And then they moved to Singapore. And then when she was in Singapore, she worked for the American Association for many years and met a lot of newcomers. So her experience of moving around communities and then meeting newcomers, I thought would make a very interesting interview.
Great. It's a great story, isn't it?
She's a wonderful, very understated person. So, but really a very interesting story.
Okay, well, we'll have a listen to a little bit of it. Before we do that, how did you actually do the podcast? Can you remind us what you used technologically?
Yes, I used Audacity. It was a very simple program to download, and actually a very simple program to use, I have to say. You don't have to be a tech genius to use it. So if Anne can, you guys definitely can.
Thumbs up. But what about the mics as well? What did you use?
So I used 2 lapel mics. Which again were very easy to use. I also had an adapter that I just put, and I used it the laptop.
Right.
To do the recording.
Did that feel like when you were recording? Did it feel natural? Did the lapels get in the way, or the wires in your way?
Actually, it was very natural. I think we had we just had a quiet space, set it up, and it was really easy to do.
Great. Were you conscious of like the mics and stuff when you were talking?
No. No. After a while. And it's interesting. I think the hardest thing is the beginning, is to actually get started, with any of this, because that is a bit unnatural when you start talking, especially, and that's why there will be some editing to do. I mean, a lot of it will be at the beginning, because I just went on, and I think I spoke about it the last time, the idea of this overlong introduction, which I would never do.
You're just
again.
hitting your stride. So, okay, well, let's have a listen to it. We've actually got your Audacity here today. So if you've watched the previous lessons, you'll be familiar with this format. What we have here is Anne's recording. Unedited. Have we done it edited?
No, it's completely unedited.
Unedited, so it's as it is. It's raw, even like with the gap at the beginning as well. So maybe we can just start it off and listen to the first sort of 20 seconds or so, and just have a think about what you want to do earlier on. Maybe there's, do we go in and edit everything? Do you want to cut out all the ums and ahs? Do you want to improve the sound quality and so on? So let's just take a sample from the beginning. So, Anne, maybe if you can hit play, we can actually listen to it back through our earphones here.
Welcome to the New Day podcast, where we talk to people who've had to create a new life in a new community. We explore personal and professional identity, friendships, fitting in and standing out. We believe that while moving may be a choice, finding your feet in a new place is not easy.
All right, let's stop that there.
It requires self-knowledge,
so we hit the stop button.
open-mindedness, vulnerability and...
Okay. So your thoughts on the first 20 seconds?
Yeah, my thoughts are it just sounds overly staged, and it just needs to go.
Needs to go means what? The whole thing?
Well, in all honesty, I think we could take out actually the beginning of the podcast, and then we'd get to where Mary and I start having a conversation, and then we could do some de-umming and de-erring, and there's a couple of couple of spots in that would need editing, but I think, in all honesty, the beginning bit is...
You're not happy with it?
Not happy with it.
But it's your decision at the end of the day. It's your podcast. So what do you want to do? Do you want to cut the beginning bit and then just drop straight into the conversation? And
Yeah,
then,
I think we could. I think we should. Yeah.
Would you then want to go back and record
And
an
I
intro?
would record a different
Okay.
intro. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I would see it.
That's
it
not
working.
unusual. I mean, some podcasters do that, just like authors would as well. They write the introduction at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of know, like once you've written it, what you need to go back and write. That's the context, the frame setting, isn't it? So it's not an unusual thing to do. And sometimes when you do it at the beginning, you get a different conversation afterwards, and it doesn't sort of fit in with what you did at the introduction stage, right? So it's not a problem doing it that way. So let's go into your Audacity and find a spot where you want to kick it off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know roughly where it is in the...
It's actually probably about 2 minutes in, which is quite a long... because I started with... a kind of general introduction as to what I thought the podcast would be.
Right.
And then I did a long introduction on Mary, which again is too long. So I just felt both things were wrong.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can work with that. So what we want to do, should we find, is there a point where you go like, hi, Mary?
Yes.
How's it going?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Okay, let's try and find that.
Yeah.
So to get there, Barrett, maybe if you can sort of take it through. So what we do is you just zoom in or zoom out to, you know what I meant, trying to do, like a bigger frame so we can actually see, that's it, see where we are. Okay. So we're just using the zoom out tool here. So we're looking for your point where you're going to ask, hi, Mary. So maybe we can just look for a gap there. Let's try and play that.
She's also navigated the art of belonging in a number of diverse communities.
I'm assuming this
Sing
is
of
That's
still...
still the introduction, yeah.
Okay. Keep going. Maybe it's a bit further in. What about up there? All right. Well, you're both talking there. It's a little bit back. It's around about 3 minutes.
Memories. So I remember. Wow. Well, I was 4 years old when we.
Okay. So keep going back.
And community successful. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
There we go.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with that, Mary? Welcome to the podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
So now when you're doing this, we have to look for like a gap, because if Mary's speaking or you're speaking and you go straight into another word, it's difficult to cut it off. The ear will pick that up. It sounds a bit strange. So we have to try and find a gap. So we zoom right in there. Let's sort of telescope into that. There we go. Okay. Okay. So I reckon it's about 2:31. Yeah. Try that.
Mary, welcome to the...
Okay. So happy with that, Mary?
Happy? Yeah.
So what we want to do, if you are happy, because we're going to get rid of this, that beginning, that first 2.5 minutes.
That's fine, yeah.
All right. So Barrett, what do we need to do?
Highlight the whole thing.
Yeah, you might want to zoom out.
Zoom out
first.
from
Yeah, so you can just highlight the whole thing, select all that, and then hit the magic delete button.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I hit delete.
All right. So
Okay.
let's listen to.
Successful. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, so you've
So
got
there's a bit of
noise, haven't you? You want to clip that off.
It's quite satisfying.
Successful. Mary,
Yes. Get rid of that. And you're ready.
Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks
So-
for having me, Anne.
You're welcome.
So you're going to have your intro.
Yeah.
So I'm here today with Mary. Mary's this, and this. We're going to talk about that. Mary, welcome to the podcast. Is that how you want it to go? Kind of something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, it's a tough one because it does start on a very high pitched kind of Mary.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what we could do about that.
Well, there's no like straightforward answer. You could you just experiment and try different ways. You could record your. There's a couple of ways you could do it, I suppose. You could do your 30-second intro or a minute intro, whatever you want to do, and then drop Mary, welcome to the podcast. You could do that. What you could do is you could, if you're being a bit more technical, maybe not quite now, but as you get sort of more confident, you could do your intro, drop what they call a stinger, and then it goes, Mary, welcome to the podcast. A stinger. Barrett, what's a stinger?
What's a stinger?
So a stinger is something you put in between your audio. So in a way, this is to make sure that people don't, download the audio and remove
It's like a print, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a copyright. It's like
Oh.
a trademark in a way.
Wow.
So that's your stinger.
So it could be. So you could have your intro like So today, welcome to the podcast. We're going to talk about da 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 da. I'm with da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then it goes boom, and the music drops, and it's like a 5-second. This is the Anne Morgan podcast.
Oh yes, yes. So
And
you have
then-
I understand.
It's a radio stinger. It's called a stinger.
Ah,
So you can get those made, and they're quite cheap. You can get them made for about $5 or $10.
wow,
On Fiverr. So-
that's interesting.
Yeah, we've got some made as
Yeah.
well. So they're useful for that purpose. Well, exactly what you're saying is where you have a certain intro and you want to drop the music and then cut it off, but not have sort of like a very different sort of energy level like you've got coming in there, like Mary.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to sort of be talking normally. Mary. You drop this big stinger and then it all sort of connects together. So you could do that.
Okay, that would be really interesting to do, actually. Yeah.
that would be. In one of the future lessons, we're going to talk about how you can get all this stuff made and done, use it, and sound
Mhm.
real pro.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So let's have a listen to where we are with Mary.
With Mary.
Yeah.
Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Anne.
You're welcome. So, what were your first memories as a small child when you made that transition from Italy to America?
Wow. Well, I was 4 years old when we moved to Michigan, and I have the vaguest of memories, scraps of memories. So I remember arriving at my aunt's home from the airport, and it was snowing, and I had to be carried by the taxi driver. So he lifted me on his shoulders and brought me to the house. I have vague memories of going to school as a 5-year-old. All the relatives that lived in my aunt's house, because we all arrived at different stages, and that was where we all stayed initially until we, found our footing and then moved into our own homes.
All right, let's
My
just
goodness,
pause
that
it
must
there.
have been an
Yeah, it's just really good stuff in terms of painting pictures, isn't it? Some nice sort of scenery that she's sort of setting out here.
I just think she's got such a lovely voice, actually, and she's a very gentle person, and I think that that comes across in the pictures that she's painting. Yeah,
Which is great.
Yeah.
Telling those stories. They're very personal start, isn't it?
Yeah.
The snow and the aunts and
and the childhood memories
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Now, in that podcast, some people may say and which is normal, and there's gaps. What are your thoughts on it? Are you happy with that?
Well, I think what would be really useful is to know how to take them out.
Right.
Especially with this one, because this there's a lot of things on this that it's the first time I'd ever spoken to somebody, so it can be there can be quite a lot of editing done on this one, I would say. So it would be useful to know how to take one of those gaps out.
Should we do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before we do that, we can just zoom out a little bit so we can get a bigger shot. I leave them all in only because it is more natural.
Yeah.
However, for example, if I was doing like an intro and I screw it up, or there's a big long pause or an or an R, which I want to take out, I might take that out.
Yeah.
But it's your choice. Neville, who you know, obviously, he will edit everything, take all the ums and ahs out, which is like very, he will deep scrub it.
Yeah.
But I leave them all in, so it's a personal choice. I think it kind of makes it more natural. But you may decide, actually, there may be cases where an or an R doesn't work for you.
Yeah. Understood.
Let's
yeah.
look at how you actually take it out. So if we can sort of find one, if we can just sort of replay Mary's bit.
Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Anne.
You're welcome. So, what were your first memories as a small child when you made that transition from Italy to America?
Wow. Well, I was 4 years old when we moved to Michigan, and I have the vaguest of memories, scraps
There you
of.
So we're going back. Let's have a look at that one. About 22 seconds. We'll zoom into that. Yeah. So that's an interesting one because that's an which is not clean cut off. It sort of joins into the next word, right? So if we can just zoom in a bit. Sorry. So the minus one, so we can look at it. Yeah. I want to sort of like, so let's have a look at that 20.
Scraps.
No, need to zoom out a little bit so we can capture it again. Yeah, that's it. So what we do, use make sure at the top you've got the select tool in that little group of 6. That's your select tool. So what we're going to do is select over the and just hit delete.
It's quite incredible, when you zoom out like that.
Yeah.
How long that sound wave is, because it's very short when you're listening to it, but you can make it, quite obvious when you
don't know,
zoom.
do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Let's have a listen.
Scraps.
So let's sort of play that back. See how that sounds.
I have the vaguest of memories, scraps of memories. So I remember.
So that's taken out. So there's a second in there as well. Now let's have a look at that second because to your point, Anna, about the length of the sound wave, and the second one is joined with the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit difficult to see at that sort of level zoomed in. So we zoom out a little bit more, Barrett, if we can. Just play that little group there and just listen to that second one. And you see how
scraps of
it's sort of joined.
Scraps of
yeah. So this one gets a bit more technical. If you want to take out something where it's joined, we can delete it as normal. Let's try and delete it as normal, but it's difficult to find the actual beginning of that right? It's around about there. If you zoom right in, So if we just kind of like zoom it out and try delete, just like a dirty fix, just delete the whole thing there, and then play it back. You might hear like a clip, like a little click, if it's not completely clean. So let's just play that. And this is what you'll find in editing sometimes.
Scraps of.
Did you hear that? Let's play it back.
Scraps of.
There's like a little click at the end.
Memories, scraps of.
It's like
memories. So I remember.
I can hear it. Yeah,
it's very faint. But what I'm saying is, if you do an edit and it doesn't completely cut it off where it's the end of that sound, or the sounds merge into each other, you get like a click or something like that, which will sound a bit funny.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a way of getting rid of that. So what we'll do is we'll select a little bit of the end of that. So let's just play it back first so we know where it is on. Yeah.
These scraps of.
Okay, so let's select a little bit of that. Select it, that's okay. Select a bit of that. Slide right over. And then we'll do like a fade out. Not all of that, Barrett, because you still got that scraps of the last bit. Just do like a fade out effect. And then the effect at the top, do a fade out. Okay, now let's play that whole section back again. Try and get rid of that click.
Memories, scraps of memories. So I remember.
So it's gone. I mean, you may not have noticed there's only small change, but the listener will pick that up. Yeah, especially if that's a very small example of it, but there are stronger ones that you may come across. Okay.
That's
You're right with
really
the ums?
interesting.
Yeah.
Fine, yes, indeed. I know there was a couple of things with the podcast where I asked, I mean, it's just finding it at the moment, but I asked Mary a very direct question and she couldn't answer it. It wasn't immediate to front of mind. So there is a gap.
Was that the advice question?
That was the advice question,
yeah.
And it just, which...
What do you want to do with that?
It needs, I think...
Should we have a listen to it?
Yes, let's see if we can...
Do you know roughly where it is?
I think it's a fair bit in.
No, we'll try and find it then. If we can zoom right now. Okay. So you can kind of, when you're looking at this, I mean, that's zoomed out too far, but you can kind of get a guess for like what is going on. I know it just looks like mess. It looks like noise, which is what it is, right? But there is a pattern to that. And generally, you might find, I can tell from looking at this, even if it's mixed down onto one channel, that there are two people talking because one person's quieter than the other. You can see that the wave is, like if you look at where it is here, like about 3:45, at the top, the time bar. 3:45, somebody's talking, and then a few seconds later, somebody else starts talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell that's somebody else's voice. So let's just have a quick listen to that, just so you can.
There was already a built-in social network for them, an extended family, and then you meet other Italians. So they didn't venture out very much. I mean, they had friends or acquaintances at work. Those were their
Interesting.
only American friends, really, and the occasional neighbor. But they don't, to this day, they never had American friends. They did not really integrate the way I did.
Yeah, so do you think they must have
Right.
relied very
Okay. At what point we're going to find this question?
We're
Does it
going to
come
find it actually a good 5-10 minutes on
from this?
there.
Let's go about 10.
Yeah, because it was to do with when Mary had arrived in Singapore.
Okay, so let's just do a quick.
And there was the chronology of, she was in America and then,
Just do like a random play at any point.
and I'll know.
That's too late, I think, that point there, Brad.
There's probably so many.
Oh, now this could be it, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Well
So if we
found.
just
So,
well
yeah.
found that, great. And Barrett, that's
Instinct.
incredible.
Barrett is on the case.
He
saying
is.
is the people who made a success of it were those who were adaptable, who had a
Yeah.
just if it's just an interesting observation
Yeah.
actually, because you've seen so many people.
What do you think? Before or after
Yeah,
that?
just
So
so
there's
this
probably
bit,
so many.
this is it.
Yeah.
Yes. So
The people who made a success of it were those who were adaptable, who had a degree of humility because they realised that holding out for what they had before was not going to work, and they had that huge degree of flexibility, and really, I suppose, a bit of a vision to reinvent themselves and be happy with the reinvention.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know, what's been some of the great reinventions you've seen? I don't know if you can think of any off the top of your head.
Great reinventions.
So it was that, I was asking Mary about people who absolutely reinvented themselves
Yeah.
when they came to Singapore. So it's a tough one to answer if you haven't, if we hadn't discussed it beforehand. And I know I really threw her at that point.
What do you want to do with it?
I think if we edit out, not the whole bit, but the bit where I ask, do you know of any reinventions? So from that point, and then I think we'd probably need to listen to what Mary says after we roll on
Right.
a little bit and see if there's a point that we can take from the end of my observation, because I think the rest of the observation's probably okay, to when Mary starts talking again.
All right. Well, let's listen to sort of a little bit before and a little bit after, so we can put it all in context
Yeah.
and work out where we can sort of chop it. So maybe about the 14.5 point, 14:30 would be a good starting point.
Or learn a new skill. You've got to change. You've got to adapt.
Is that it?
So really, Mary, what you're saying is the people who made a success of it were those who were adaptable, who had a degree of humility because they realised that holding out for what they had before was not going to work, and they had that huge degree of flexibility, and really, I suppose, a bit of a vision to reinvent themselves and be happy with the reinvention.
Yes. Yes.
I'd
I don't know,
Okay.
cut there.
think some of the
Okay, let's keep it rolling.
Inventions.
So let's see what comes afterwards, because you want to find now.
Or learn a new.
You basically want to find like Mary speaking.
Yeah.
That sort of makes sense after what you
after
said.
what I've said. Yeah.
So if we sort of go back to where we were. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, what's been some of the great reinventions you've seen? I don't know if you can think of any off the top of your head.
Great reinventions. There's
It's a tough question.
probably so many. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just if it's just an interesting observation
Yeah.
actually, because you've seen so many people come and go, and I know a lot of people do go through that process of, you know, I was a banker and now I'm going to be, you know, a communication specialist, or I've seen a gap in that market, and they sort of fit themselves in. But we can come back to that. But the other side that I'm interested in as well is the social side. You know, how do you make friends and make...
What about if we sort of cut that bit that you said and then cut it all the way up to the point where you said the other side I'm interested in is the social side, because now she's back on track. I don't know what her answer is, but it sounds like it's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Social side.
You know. So where's that point from there?
The other side that I'm interested in.
You're cutting it from about 15 to 1546 or something, aren't you? So this is... So what we're going to do, we'll try cut that out, listen to it, and if it doesn't work, we can just kind of undo it, right? It's about 15, wasn't it? I can't remember. There we go. Yeah,
I'd have
it's
to
before
think
that.
about
Yeah, it's about there, I think.
Yes.
I don't know, what's been some of the...
And just even, a little bit before.
Yes. I don't know, what's been some of the...
Right, let's do it. Delete all that, all right? And then just listen to the bit before so we can get a nice clean ending.
A bit of a vision to reinvent themselves and be happy with the reinvention.
Yes.
The other side that I'm interested in as well is the social side.
You happy with that?
You know, how do you... make friends and
let's listen to that back again. Let's listen just a little bit before that, the
great.
other side. Yeah, just to see if it sounds all
holding out for what they had before.
Yeah.
Or for the same amount of money, or learn a new skill. You've got to change. You've got to adapt.
So really, Mary, what you're saying is the people who made a success of it were those who were adaptable, who had a degree of humility because they realised that holding out for what they had before was not going to work, and they had that huge degree of flexibility, and really, I suppose, a bit of a vision to reinvent themselves and be happy with the reinvention.
Yes.
The other side that I'm interested in as well is the social side. You know, how do you make friends and make...
That's quite smooth. You would never know, would you?
No. I love this editing.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Great.
I think the key is what we're trying to do in the editing as well is not just take stuff out, but also play it back, listen to before and after to make sure it flows, because you don't want to sort of like throw the listener off. They'll pick something up if it sounds weird.
Yeah, understand.
Like, you know, it's completely out of context. But I don't think anybody could have picked that up.
It does flow very well now, actually. Yeah.
Okay, just conscious of the time, let's save this up, Barrett, and then hopefully it's just a little bit of an intro into the editing, and you've got sort of the basics there. Is there anything else that's sort of a burning question about the editing that you want to look at? Or
No,
you think you've got enough to work with?
I think that was exactly what I wanted for this particular tape. It was to understand the basics of, you know, if a mistake has been made, how do you just delete that piece and join the two ends up? So as you've been saying, it sounds natural. It doesn't sound, you know, forced or clipped, or and I think you've really demonstrated that, which is fantastic. Yeah, so certainly something you know, something for me to learn and to apply now.
Great.
Yeah, really.
Excellent.
Great.
Hopefully that's giving you the
it.
basics to get going. Are we saving that up for Anne there? Okay, make sure you save your project, whatever you do.
Oh, yes.
Don't want to lose it. So, so again, just to review, that saves it all as an Audacity project file, which you can then work with. You can export it later on as an MP3, but for now, work within that Audacity project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there you go. That should be most of the basics. I think, you know, not to overdo the editing, like leave a few errors in there if possible, if they're not, you know, don't detract too much from the story and the flow. You know, don't worry about, you know, the ums and the ahs and the flunked words and all that kind of thing. that's all right, I think. Depends, I mean, how you feel about it. But I tend to go that side because editing can take a long time. You know, an hour of editing can take 5 or 6 hours, you know, so it's up to you. You decide.
Yeah, I like that balance, to be honest. I think, you know, if there is something that's really, you know, that didn't go right with the podcast, but the rest of it works, then that's great. You can take that out. But you're right. You know, I think on a project like this, if you took every and you know, it would be, you know, take, you know, far too long, and B, would detract from it. It is a conversation, you know, it is a natural flow of things. So
a bit sterile, maybe.
Let's
talk about, I mean, one thing, I mean, again, it's all personal taste. Let's talk about what happens if something does really go wrong, what you do in a podcast. We haven't talked about that, have you?
No.
Sorry.
No.
So let's say something happens in a podcast and we're sitting here in the studio and the fire alarm goes off, or, you know, something falls on our heads, God forbid, touch wood, nothing like that. Or I say something really stupid, or I get your name wrong, like I call you Mary during the podcast. Oh God, what an idiot! You know, this can happen. You know, this is real. What do you do? Because that you can't really leave in, can you?
No.
And I've actually done this. I've actually done a podcast, and I did the whole 60 minutes, 40 minutes with somebody, and I got their name wrong at the end. Right. That was a real screw up, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember. I remember that.
It was a long day. It was a long day.
Yeah.
But he had a name which is easily to make a mistake out of. But so what do you do in that situation? I think the best thing to do is own it. Say, oh, sorry, I really screwed up there. Let's edit that out and tell them so you don't know they'll stop. Keep it running and say to them, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go back. I'm going to ask you the question rather than sort of continue that sentence. Go back, ask the question, the last question before that, and then we'll start again. So just to review, what would happen is I say, oh, yeah, so Mary, tell me a little bit about the time. Oh, bollocks. Sorry, mistake. You're not Mary, are you? I've been sitting here with you for the last few hours, and your name's Anne, right? Okay.
Right, yeah, so...
Stop. Then what we do, I'm going to ask you that question again. So I'll rewind, but before I ask you the question, I'm going to leave a gap of 10 seconds, right? And the reason I'm going to do that is because when I look at the Audacity file, I can see it.
Oh, of course, right? Yeah.
That's what you want to look for. So that if you do make a mistake, stop it, tell them you made a mistake, and say we're going to redo that. But before we redo it, 10-second gap. Yeah. And that makes it so much easier. And then always start with a question. Okay. Go back in and then hand back over to you rather than sort of halfway through the sentence, because it would never make sense, right?
Yeah.
So that's my advice, is just create that audio gap so you can pick it up straight away and deal with it.
Because that was interesting. When we were editing the tape with Mary, we were lucky that the two ends of that fitted together so nicely, you know, because... You know, but if I'd left 10 seconds and then gone back, we could have spotted it, and it would have been much easier. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, there you go. Do you feel confident now, and you can go off and edit your?
Yes, I do actually. Yeah, I do.
Play around with it. Yeah, exactly. Great. Well, hopefully that was an intro to using Audacity. Very basic stuff, but like all this stuff, you just got to go off and do it yourself now, haven't you? And learn and play around with it and get an idea for how the tools work. Yeah. You can only do it by actually doing it yourself. So hopefully, and thank you very much for being a great sport and a great student.
Thank you.
And sharing your journey with us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. And hopefully, more.
Yes. I need more tapes.
What are you going to do next? Are you going to do another podcast? I don't want to put pressure on you.
Yeah. I'll have another one for next week. Definitely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. We look forward to the results.
Mm-hmm. We'll
Great.
See. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. This is Graham, Barath and Anne signing off from the PitchDeck podcast studio.